Hello, and welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Megan, and my amazing co-host is...
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hello there. We are your source for messy, imperfect advice and homeschool community. As two women in our mid-ish 40s, I hit the middle the other day, a week or two
Yeah.
ago. I hit the exact center, so now I'm technically in my mid-40s. But we are over the whole idea of putting out a fake facade to impress who? Who? Like, we're not even sure. But whoever they might be, we can't be bothered. Take me as I am or don't. I really don't care.
Yep.
So we show up week after week to give you a complete and accurate picture of what homeschooling really looks like from an imperfect perspective, because none of us are perfect.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the thing. The Instagram version of homeschooling is practically unrecognizable to so many of us who are actually living this life day in and day out. So if you're considering homeschooling, just know that the social media ideals portrayed are rarely how it actually plays out. And if you are homeschooling and wondering why, no matter how hard you try, you can't measure up to those Instagram accounts, it's okay. Take a deep breath and just know that very few people are actually homeschooling in a way that resembles that version, because that version is really intended for likes and, let's be honest, payouts from Meta.
hmm Yeah, it's not to say the version that we're doing and that most people are doing is less than. It's
Yeah.
fully successful. Our kids are prepared. Our kids are happy. Our kids are thriving. But it doesn't need to look like that for those outcomes to be the case. So, yeah, 100%. You're doing great. Authenticity over polish every single day here at Homeschool Moms Unfiltered and in our community. So, the other thing that makes the Homeschool Moms Unfiltered universe a breath of fresh air in the homeschool space is that we are a progressive and secular community. This is a space where critical thinking is encouraged. No topic is off limits, and we don't agree to disagree on human rights. If you're new here, you'll soon discover that we center our conversations around crazy concepts like evolution is real, dinosaurs existed, and we're not rewriting history to ignore how Christianity has been used to justify slavery, segregation, and ongoing fights against equality, up to and including marriage rights today.
I'm not laughing at any of the things you said. I'm laughing at the way you said it. It totally reminds me of that stupid AI robot that Melania walked out with. I, s- I can't. I don't. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah,
So,
done.
yeah.
So it's okay. We needed a little pause anyway for all the people who were like, oh, these people are woke assholes to hit stop on their players.
Yeah.
So if you're still here,
There's
we're
the
happy
door.
you're here.
Yeah. And yep, exactly. So, look, if you have been feeling like the black sheep of the homeschool world and thinking like, do I need to go buy like a long denim skirt and perfect the Michelle Duggar-esque whisper voice if I ever intend to blend in? Rest assured, you do not need to do that. There's no need for those extremes. You can totally hang out here with us. We won't side eye your werewolf smut. I might ask for a recommendation of it. Megan will be like, you got any good history? I love World War II history. I can read all of it. It's great. And then we're all like, I don't know. I don't know if I need to read it. I feel like I'm kind of reliving it. Welcome.
Exactly. Right. So if you're overjoyed to find empathy and sanity in a homeschool space, give us a follow real quick before we dive into today's topic. That way you'll never miss an episode. Today, we are going to be playing our education version of the card game Bullshit. It'll be good fun. Basically, we're going to talk about a bunch of things that are assumed to be fact about education, learning, growth, child development, etc. And we're going to call each one what it is. Bullshit. So stick around. It's going to be some much needed lighthearted fun and a solid dose of reassurance that homeschooling doesn't have to look one way to equal long-term success. But first, we start off all of our episodes with the weekly recap. It's part of our anti-influencer, keeping it real vibe around here. So how's your week been, Amanda?
Boy, how's my week been?
Dare I ask?
Yeah. You know, I talked last week about the fact that I, in well, at that time, I was just coming to the realization that I was probably in my regular flare that I get this time of year. And I think that that is at least partly to blame for what's currently happening in our homeschool life. I'm also gonna say that my kiddo is going through a voice change, and so there's
Oh,
lots of cracking and his voice is all
oh,
over the place, which I think is super adorable, and he would be like, "Oh gosh, mom." But that type of change doesn't happen on its own. There's a lot of hormones also involved over there, and between the 2 of us, it's just like a total roller coaster. We have a lot of really good days. This is the time of year where we're kinda, like, just in the slide, like we're wrapping up with our requirements with the charter that we use and things like that. But man, we have some ugly days too. And a lot of it is when my kiddo's just not doing the best job of managing his time. And then it bleeds over. And we talked before, I have this rule where I homeschool until 1 o'clock. And then inevitably at like 4 o'clock, he's like, I need to do this worksheet. And you said I have to do it with you to make sure I understand. And I'm like, I don't fucking wanna do a worksheet at 4 PM. I was supposed to be done 3 hours ago. And then it gets ugly. Yeah, I mean, just, and then I like, on top of that, next week, I'm pretty sure it's next week. I should really look at the calendar, but I know for a fact that we are coming up to the time that CASP is required, which is our version of state standardized testing. Like 17 states use CASP or something, then everyone uses all these different ones, right? Smarter Balance is technically also CASP or something. In any event, it's about time for that, and that's, like, just an extra layer of stress. It's not fun, like, it just and yeah. We've got some field trips coming up that should be fun, but I'm really tired, and I yeah, my kiddo gets to go do, like, a behind the scenes thing at Disneyland, which is gonna be amazing, and I'm so tired. I don't wanna go to Disneyland. Like, it's so Anyway, it'll be okay. It's a first world problem, and it'll be okay, but I'm still
mhm.
tired.
Yeah,
So, yeah. How
the
about you?
exhaustion is real. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, things are good. Just a bunch of randomness. I talked last week about how we're just like finishing out the school year and planning for the fall and the summer and camps and travel. Not travel for me necessarily. Like my oldest kiddo is going away for camp. My younger kiddo, I'm working on getting him away for camp, getting that organized. And then my oldest has some friends who are coming here to stay for a little bit. And then they're going to go backpacking for a little bit. So it's just a lot of moving parts and pieces, but all good things. It's all fine. I painted the living room, which was exciting. My boys went to Spain to play Pokemon for the weekend. They took the bus. It was like a 7-hour bus ride. And so they took the bus over there to play Pokemon for 3 days, really. Like, they left on a Friday, came back on a Sunday, but because my youngest kiddo has a lot of sensory issues, I needed to paint while he's not home because he doesn't like the smell. So there we have it. So that got done, which was nice. So I'm just slowly adding some character to our apartment that was entirely white when we moved in. I record in my bedroom, and so my room is the only downstairs room that has yet to be done. So that'll be next. It'll probably take me like a month or so to figure out A, what I want to do, and B, work up the energy to do another room. But we'll get there, So the white wall will not be much longer if you watch on video. But yeah, it's coming along. So yeah, my daughter started an internship this week at an organization here in Lisbon that focuses on upcycling and sustainability in fashion, which she's going to fashion school in the fall. She's been studying fashion. So that's exciting. It was really just a great opportunity for her to meet some people who share common interests or related interests. You didn't necessarily have to be in fashion to do it. Like, there were photography people who were welcome and stuff like that. So that when they upcycle stuff, somebody photographs them and you could come without a ton of sewing skills and learn those things. So I'm excited. Hopefully she'll make some connections and some people who have similar interests, which is always a good thing. I'm rationing my pink lemonade source. We have an American store here in Lisbon. There's one in Spain as well, where they bring in all sorts of stuff. Like you can get Coca-Cola there with the high fructose corn syrup in it, like we have in the United States, which I'm like, why would you want that? I know it's what people are used to and what they know, but the version here, like if you drink it for a little while, like you don't even notice the difference anymore. And it doesn't have high fructose corn syrup in it. But sure as shit, they have the bottled in Atlanta stuff over there. And it's got to have this sticker on it with a warning label and stuff like that in order for it to legally be sold here. But I like my Country Time pink lemonade and they're running out. I've been drinking my lemonade out of the blender cup for the NutriBullet for a while now because I went to Sephora to get some cream for under, or like some concealer stuff for under my eyes. And the lady like touched my skin. And listen, I know it's her job to sell me stuff, but she like touched my skin and like repulsively was like, it's so dry. And I was like, all right, I'm going to drink out of a bigger cup then, lady. Okay. And she did try to sell me an $80 moisturizer, which I did not buy. So I get that that was all part of the shtick, but I am consuming more fluids as a result of the interaction. In other beauty news, if you've ever looked at those thigh sticks that they sell online or like in the thing, have you ever seen those and you're like, I wonder if they really work? So I went out one day last week and I was wearing a dress because it's getting warm here and there's no air conditioning. So you just wear less clothing. And I had bought one. So I was like, I'm going to try it. And I didn't really have any rubbing. And I was like, okay, but maybe I just didn't get that sweaty because it's like not that early in the season, or maybe I didn't walk enough that it was
Mhm.
going to become an issue or whatever. But then the next day I forgot to put the thigh stick and also wore a dress. No, it worked really well. So next day, by the time we got home, I was like, oh my gosh. So if you've ever been curious, treat yourself to one. They're good. I will be taking out stock for the summer. So yeah, that's just about it. My brother-in-law is getting married this month in the United States, and my born in Venezuela brown husband is hell-bent on going now that ICE agents are in the airport. I'm like, I think that's the dumbest thing you could ever do. And so that's been a source of contention around here lately. And I told him that if he ends up in an ICE detention facility, that I will hire a lawyer, but I'm not going to stand outside and do the tearful wife thing because I told him not to go and he didn't listen to me. So I'll be here podcasting, even should the worst occur, because he didn't listen to me and I told him not to go. So that's that. But
There you
anyway,
go. Yeah.
yeah, that's it, right?
Yeah. There you go. That pretty
listened.
much sums it up. Yep. Should have
Yeah.
listened.
I'm like, we moved out of the United States for this purpose and you're going back. Okay, fine, whatever, fine. Like, we'll send a registry gift. Okay. I'm sorry, but no.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Today's episode. Let's talk bullshit.
Just do
So-
it.
So even if you have been homeschooling for a while, there are those moments where you just question it all. Am I screwing this up? Are the decisions I'm making right now correct for now and the future? Is the differentiation I'm offering helping or is it hurting? What about the accommodations I'm providing? Will my child be able to hack it in the real world?
Yeah. I mean, I'm over 10 years in and here to assure you, super common. Even all these years in, and I'm seeing it work and I'm seeing my kids succeed, and yet you still have those moments. So I think part of that comes from the fact that most of us are the product of the traditional school environment, whether it was public school, private school, whatever. We've been told our whole lives that learning happens this specific way, and this is the path to success. And if you step off this path, catastrophe and ruin are almost certain. And while most of us logically know that's not the case, it doesn't always provide reassurance, especially at like 2 a.m. when you wake up to pee and then you go back to bed and you're staring at the ceiling and your brain starts turning and then you can't fall asleep because you're like, I'm screwing up my kids. So no, you're not. And we're going to dig into it today.
Yes. So today we will be sharing some commonly held quote unquote truths about how kids learn or what education must look like. And then we're going to discuss if that's really something that we need to be holding on to. Now, this is probably going to be one of those episodes where our difference in the way that we homeschool might peek out a little here and there in the discussion. I'm an aggressive academic homeschooler, and Megan is a self-identified loosey-goosey unschooler, intentional, but unschooler all the same. And we just don't always line up on every topic. But that's okay because different viewpoints on topics like these aren't a terrible thing. Again, we don't agree to disagree on human rights, but things like this, it's okay. Sometimes you might feel like you vibe more with me. And sometimes you might find yourself nodding along to what Megan is saying, or you might land somewhere in the middle. All of it works. All of it is fine.
True story. All right. So we've made categories of topics. So our first category of topics is learning and academic related myths. And so the first one is that kids learn best sitting still and listening. And I call bullshit. Okay. I do. I mean, maybe that's true for some kids, right? It's not universal for all kids to be the same. That's part of the reason most of us don't like the school system is that it's very cookie cutter and very one size fits all. So there are some kids who might need that, who might like that. I do have a kid who takes class sitting at a desk and he wants to be at his specific desk. Can't be another desk. Like one time I was like, oh, it's somebody's birthday. Why don't we go to my parents? My parents have an office. There's a desk there. There's two monitors. I'm like, nope, 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 nope. Has to be his desk. So yes, he's sitting at a desk. Are there 700 fidget toys there? Yes. So he's not sitting still, even though he's sitting at a desk. There's a lot happening. In fact, I was up there the other day and noticed that there's quite a few pen spots on the wall next to his desk. And I was like, what's happening here? And he was like, oh, because when I'm like flinging my pen around and sometimes it flies out of my hand and then it hits the wall and it makes a mark on the wall. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it's fine. We'll paint over it. We'll Mr. Clean Magic Eraser it. It's not a big deal. But yeah, he's moving and grooving all through class. So for a lot of kids, not all, but for a lot of kids, movement actually improves their focus and retention and helps them actively learn and engage with whatever you're talking about. Getting a kid to sit still and look at you and make eye contact with you does not equal engagement. It just means that they're sitting still and looking at you, and they might be using every ounce of mental power and energy that they have just to sit still and look at you. And in that case, they've learned nothing because they have heard nothing of what you just said. So yeah, they can bounce on a pogo stick for all I care. As long as they're learning and having fun, have the best time ever.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing for me, right? Do some kids learn best sitting relatively still and listening? Sure. Yeah, there are some.
Yeah.
I definitely learned more that way. I have never been a like moving around. I don't want my chair to wobble while I'm listening. That's not my thing. My kiddo loves a desk. I just got him a new desk that gives him more than double the surface area to work
Ooh.
on. And he's at his desk all the time now. Some of that works for kiddos, and sometimes it works for certain topics or certain
Hmm.
subjects, and it doesn't work for others. I think that's the biggest thing for me. The idea that it has to be that way and only that way. Yeah, of course, that's bullshit. Like,
Hmm.
it can work, it
Hmm.
can be part of what works.
Yeah.
That on its own. Yeah. No, thank you.
Hmm.
All right. If a child is struggling, they just need to try harder. Oh, buddy.
Oh, bullshit.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, look, missing skills is not the same thing as a lack of effort. Okay. If your kiddo is struggling with something, one of the first things you need to do is go back and be like, is there a part that's missing? Is there a piece that's missing? Are we missing a key component of scaffolding? And without that, the whole thing is wobbly. This is not complicated. And you are at home one on one with your kiddos. So you absolutely have the time to be able to go back and figure that out. I get that it's hard to do in a classroom with 25 or 30 kids. That is hard, but we know better and we have the
Hmm.
time. Look, burnout starts here in this place when you're like, my kid is struggling, so I'm going to give them even more books to read. I'm going to give them even more worksheets to do. They're not doing well on these worksheets and they're really struggling and they're really frustrated, so they should do 10 more. Like, hello. Like, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Just no.
Yeah. It doesn't work. I mean, you have to go back and think about how you're teaching it, How are the resources? Are the resources the way that your kids need to learn? I mean, we had some tearful homeschool days in the beginning where they'd be crying, I'd be crying. It was this whole thing. And I would have to step back and be like, I'm the grown up. They're not going to fix this thing. I'm the grown up. I have to step back and be like, where has this gone off the rails? Because we need to fix this thing. And the same is true for struggling. If it's not,
Yeah.
if there's a meme or like a quote with like pretty pictures that goes around on homeschool pages that's like, if kids can't learn the way we're teaching, then we need to teach the way kids learn or something like that. And it's true. Figure out how your kid needs to learn this information and what you need to do in order to make that happen and make the change. That's the beauty of homeschooling, is the flexibility. Love
And
it.
I'm just gonna say that Megan said, "In the early days, we had some teary days." Like, if you're sitting there going like, "Oh, it's not
I'm
early
still
days and we have teary days," like, I'm there with you. It happens sometimes. And sometimes, yeah, you have to do that thing where like my kiddo has this one curriculum that he really likes and he doesn't want to change it. But it is the one curriculum that we have the most teary days over. And so we've made an executive decision. We're going to spend a month trying a different curriculum that teaches the same thing. And if at the end of that, he still really wants to go back to the other one, okay, fine. But he's got to try this other one and see if maybe it will also work in a way that we can all be a little bit happier.
hmm
Like, don't
Yeah.
feel bad if you're many years in and you still have teary days. You're not the only one.
Yeah. All right. Next quote unquote truth about learning is that memorizing something means you understand it. No, I am living proof of that because I passed chemistry and I knew all the formulas. I don't know anything about chemistry and I didn't even at the time, but I had memorized the formulas and I knew how to plug numbers into them. So there you go. Right? Being able to repeat something does not mean that you can apply something.
Yeah.
Huge, huge difference. Short term performance is being able to regurgitate something and spit it out on a test, versus long term learning something means that you can call upon it later and throughout life when you need it. We just had our book club meeting on Patreon like a week ago or so, and we're reading a book with the longest title ever. I don't know who it was, like, oh my gosh, who came up with this? How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. An oldie but a goodie. Neither one of us have read it. And it was funny because there was something in there about this kid being frustrated because they had studied for a test and then the test got delayed. And they were like, well, now I'm going to have to study again. And I'm like, how effective was the studying the first time if you have to study again only a few days later in order to take the test again? So real understanding shows up when you can apply the information, and it shows up when you can apply that information in different scenarios. So yeah, memorizing stuff. I see posts all the time like, at what age are we memorizing the state capitals? I'm like, never. I mean, ask Alexa, Google it. In what adult capacity have you ever been sat down and been like, state capitals in alphabetical order, go? It's not a thing that people need to know and like off the top of their head all the time necessarily. So if you have a kid who loves geography and it lights their soul on fire, have fun. But like, okay, why are we memorizing this when it exists in the palm of your hand on Google all the time?
To win the board game that we regularly play as a family, but that's a whole other story. I mean, look, I will say we differ a little on this because I do think that there is value to memorization and to practicing certain types of memorization. And the reality is, yes, application is far more important for a bigger long-term skill. But there are situations where you have to randomly memorize facts that shouldn't really matter, but you just have to memorize them. And that's the thing with a lot of tests. Unfortunately, in school, a lot of tests are not about application of what you're
hmm
learning. It's about very specific random facts, just like your driving test. A driving test has so many stupid questions that are
hmm
very specific, like what is the exact number of this? Exactly how many feet? Like when you're driving, you are never going to get out and measure to see if you've got that many feet between you and the vehicle ahead of you, right? Like uh, it's, but you know, the world is still set up that way. There are times that
hmm
memorization matters. So does memorization equal understanding? No, not necessarily. They are both important and they're different skills. And to conflate them as the same skill. I completely agree. That's bullshit. But I do think that they're
Mhm.
both important skills. Okay. If it's fun, it's not rigorous. I hate this one. I hate this one. I won't even call it bullshit. I'll call it a steaming pile of donkey shit. Look, I do agree, again, that sometimes things are important and they're not fun.
Mhm.
Right? That is life. Your kid might want to go into something and they got to take an AP something and take the test, and it just sucks. It sucks to have to learn how to pass that test. It sucks to have to practice it. It's not fun. But you are homeschooling. You can find so many amazing curriculum that are really rigorous, but also a ton of fun. Learning can be so much fun, and you can be learning so much in the fun. So,
Mhm.
yeah, joy increases retention. There's no good reason to make sure you take all the joy out of it. Like, oh, you are going to hate this, but I bet you'll really remember it. It's
Yeah.
like, no, you're really going to remember how much you hated it, but you're not going to
Mhm.
really remember it. Engagement allows for deeper thinking. We see this all the time when you're having interesting conversations and your kid is making these connections that you're like, oh my gosh, like that's an amazing
Yes.
connection. That's because they enjoyed it, they were engaged. Even the deep stuff, maybe it's not necessarily in a joyful way, but in a way that sparks them, that lights them up. That's amazing. And the
Mhm.
reality is, look, adults learn this way too. We just want to pretend like we're above that or something, like, oh, no, I'm so serious. Come on.
Yeah. Totally not the case. That lends itself to our next one, which is total bullshit, which is play is not real learning. I mean, Mr. Rogers told us that play was learning. Come on.
Right?
You're gonna tell me Mr. Rogers was wrong. Kids learn problem solving through play, social skills through play, creativity in play. It's especially critical for younger kids. And this is not Megan and Amanda think so. We literally have read hundreds of studies because we built an entire course for people who are homeschooling kids ages 6 and under on how to implement intentional play based learning for kids ages 6 and under. And even our academic regressive homeschooler over here is like, yes, play based learning for homeschoolers ages 6 and under. Yes, we devalue play because it doesn't look academic, but that is what is age appropriate for those kids. And just because they're over 6 doesn't mean they're still not learning through play. There's so much power in game schooling and creative play and imaginative play and all of that. It is amazing. We see posts all the time where parents are like, my kids are in the other room and they're playing this amazing game that they've made up, but we were supposed to start school 20 minutes ago. Should I interrupt them? And I mean, listen, if they're young, first of all, I'm like, why? But then on top of it, I'm like, for the most part, you can Tetris your schedule around a bit and let them play. They're learning through play. So it's all good. Play is amazing.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, play, as the aggressive academic homeschooler, I would say play can't be the only thing. Intentional play
Right.
is important,
Yes.
but also you can learn a ton of things through unintentional play. Like just,
Yeah, just
I mean, it's
casual,
that's,
haphazard fun.
yeah. We recently did an episode about reading and like the importance of reading and good literature and how even good literature can be found in graphic novels. But there was also an element in that episode about the fact that it's okay to just have pleasure reading of nonsense as well.
Hmm.
You need a balance, and
Hmm.
play is part of that balance. And it is still learning. It can be learning. I mean,
Hmm.
and when it's not, that's okay too.
Yeah,
Anyway, get off that soapbox. Next one. Kids should be reading by a certain age or they're behind. Now, I say this is half bullshit.
I agree.
There's there's a wide range of normal,
Hmm.
okay? And late readers often catch up quickly.
Hmm.
And pressure can totally delay progress, right?
Hmm.
The more pressure you put on a kiddo, the more anxiety they have. And it could be that they push back and they don't want to, or it could be that they get in their head and they're even more anxious about trying it and they don't want to make any mistakes. And so they take even longer to do it. So there's definitely an aspect here of, you know, don't worry if your kiddo's not reading in kindergarten. There's still plenty of time for them to learn the basics and the foundation and be a great reader and love reading.
Mhm.
And it does not matter what age they learn to read, they can still become a great reader. They
Mhm.
might love reading, even if they don't learn to read until much later. We'll also say we talk a lot about how you can't be behind. And that's one of those kind of homeschool things where can you be behind? Of course. I mean, come on, of course. It's like a lot of other things. There's a certain aspect of it that's like, well, I mean, of course. But the bigger idea behind the saying that you can't be behind is that you find where your kid is and you work on progress. And that is the important part. It's not about where they're at. It's about the fact that you're consistently working on progress and their overall trajectory is forward. Even if it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back, their overall trajectory is forward. And so they're not behind. They're working at their pace and they're making progress. All of that said, the reality is there are other things at play. And
Mhm.
if you have reached a certain point where it's like, I mean, really, almost everyone I know, almost all of the kids out there are reading, and my kiddo's still really struggling in ways that I don't understand. And we've tried the OG method and we've tried this, and like, they're just not picking it up. Please go get them evaluated. Please
Mhm.
talk to your pediatrician. Don't ignore issues because, like, well, they're never behind. Be there for your kid, be their advocate. So, I mean, I think, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think the pressure to read in kindergarten is bullshit. That
yes.
one I'm all over. But yeah, I totally agree. If you're hitting age 7, age 8, age 9, age 10, and kiddo is really still struggling to make forward progress and reading is just, oh, yeah, there's probably something up. And the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to support your kiddo. So go get the information. And I say go get the information like, oh, it's just so easy. It doesn't cost thousands of dollars to get an evaluation and months of waiting on a wait list to get an appointment. But so, yes, I understand that is a very privileged thing to just be like, go get an evaluation. But however you can, in any way you can, get some support for that if it reaches that point. But reading in kindergarten, bullshit. Okay. Next, our next section is on assessment and success myths. So, of course, we're going to be talking about test taking. Test taking equals subject mastery. I mean, I kind of just said it before. If you have to study for a test 1 week and then study for the test 4 days later because you don't know any of this stuff still, you haven't mastered it, clearly. But also, on top of that, you have kids who just aren't good test takers, who have test anxiety, kids who suck at the timing of tests. Working through that big time over here right now in preparation for my kid's first AP test because he likes to think really, really deep. And I'm like, well, you can't spend a half an hour on that one question. I'm sorry. He gets extra time, but he doesn't get like a week. The format can skew the results. The test that he has to
Yeah.
take has a section where they have to write stuff. Okay. Oh, that's going to be his whole situation. And yes, there's accommodations in place and all that. But this first AP exam, I've been spending a lot of time talking about how this is a complete experiment. We're going for the experience of this, and it doesn't matter. And no one will ever have to see it if you don't do well. And then you'll know what to expect for the next time. So there's a lot of that that goes into these tests. Some kids know the information, but they can't spit it out in the way you're asking them to spit it out or on cue or on demand that way. Testing measures compliance and stamina in as many ways as it does knowledge. I am deeply worried about my kid's stamina taking an AP exam. He's going to need to sleep for a week after this test. It's going to take every spoon he possibly has. Not because he doesn't know AP statistics, but because this process is going to be a lot. So, test taking is one way to measure ability and subject mastery. We did a whole episode on whether or not you need to test and grade stuff, and we gave you a ton of ways that you can measure whether or not your child learns something other than testing, if this is not a thing. So, yeah, it might be a part of your kid's life. To Amanda's point before, if you want to get a driver's license, you're going to need to take a test. There are certain things where you will end up needing to take a test, but testing is not the be all and end all of knowing if your kid knows something.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. Test taking ability does not equal subject mastery. There are kids that test well and
Mhm.
they do know subject mastery. At the end of the day, you're not going to do well on the SAT or the ACT because you crammed for it the week before. That's not how it works. You have to have a lot of knowledge about a lot of different things to do well on those kinds of tests. It's the same with state testing or things like that. And so there is a certain level of subject mastery there that does equal test taking ability, but that does not negate the fact that there are plenty of kids who have subject mastery and they lack test taking ability. It doesn't take away from their subject mastery. It just means they're not good at taking standardized tests. We all know someone who was like that if we weren't like that ourselves. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
All right. The next one, success in school predicts success in life. I mean, all you have to do in my world is like think back to school and the people who were, I mean, some of them, yeah, and some of them, not. That's what class reunions are for.
I have a friend who was like the most epic stoner in high school and owns her own business, and she's a great mom, and she's happily traveling the world with her kids on a budget, like on a dime, any chance she can get. Yeah. And then there's people who went to school who have multiple degrees that I went to school with, and they're still trying to figure out what the heck they want to do with themselves at 45. And that's okay too. There's no judgment there. Whatever floats your boat. But school success and life success are very different. They're two completely different environments. The real
Yeah.
world does not look like school. So the fact that you'd be good in school does not mean that you'd be good in life necessarily.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah, sure, it might and it might not. And there are examples on both sides of the spectrum. So to be
Mhm.
like, this is the way and it is the answer. And if you didn't succeed in high school, the rest of your life is just pointless. Like, oh, sit down and shut up. Bullshit. There we go. That's the word.
Bullshit.
And that,
Exactly. All right. We kind of talked a little bit about this when we talked about testing, but another one, you need traditional school metrics to prove learning. We'll go with a semi bullshit for this one too, maybe in the sense that even as an unschooler, for my kids to move on to university, I had to show traditional school metrics. They needed a transcript. Okay. But that didn't mean that that's how I measured my kids throughout their education. And it didn't mean that I was testing my kids to get grades and stuff like that. So during our homeschool life, I was making sure that they were growing through conversation, through projects they were completing, through real world application, depending on what state we lived in, submitting portfolios for review to make sure that they were advancing and progressing and stuff like that. So on the day to day, you do not need traditional school metrics. And if you have a parenting partner who wants you to give spelling tests every week, you can bookmark this section and pass it off. Fake, or they're like, they want math quizzes and pop quizzes and everything else. That is not necessary. But at the end, yes, you are, if your child wants to go to university or wants to go into a specific program, I mean, even some summer camps and stuff like that.
yeah.
If it's an academic based summer camp, you need to send off a thing that says, my kid took these classes and this is how they did. If you do want to lean into unschooling and you don't know how those two things could ever possibly come together, come talk to me, either in a Patreon meeting or a coaching session. I will help you figure out how you can document your beautiful, hippie, organic unschooling journey on a transcript without sacrificing your child's education and without being dishonest on your transcript. There is a way to balance those two things, but it does take being very intentional.
Yeah, I think that's it. At the end of the day, there are situations and times that you are going to probably need traditional school metrics to prove learning. As much as we want to create this amazing, idyllic homeschool bubble, we also live in the real world, and the real world does not generally understand this amazing, idyllic homeschool bubble that we are creating. So I mean, it is what it is. One example of this off the top of my head, we've been doing writing and we've been working on getting writing feedback from sources that aren't me because my kiddo is much more open to that kind of feedback. as many kids are when there's something that
Hmm.
they struggle with and they need some feedback, it lands better from someone not mom. Almost every place we turn gives us a writing rubric. I don't know why people are so hung up on these writing rubrics now, but he's constantly getting writing rubrics. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, okay, fine, that's the writing rubric, but go look at the actual feedback. Go look at the actual examples. Why does it have to go into a writing rubric? Well, because that's what traditional schools do now. And so every time it gets evaluated, it gets shoved into this traditional school writing rubric. Just give us the feedback. The feedback is where it's actually useful. I don't care
Hmm.
if it's, I don't know what the first color is, but yellow and orange and green or whatever. I don't like anyway. All right, we have more to cover. Before we do that, the new unit study is out. I know last podcast we were like, I'm not really sure when it'll be out, but it should be out around the time that you listen to this podcast. It's out now. So if you are listening when this episode first drops, go make sure you download the unit study if you're part of our Patreon because it's available for download the month that it drops. If you're not part of our Patreon, you can get it as part of one the membership levels. There's some that are making a great savings deal. There's some where it's wrapped up with live meetings and things like that. You can buy it on its own on Teachers Pay Teachers. If you're like, I don't know how to do any of those things, check out our social media or look for the links in the show notes here. But it's a great unit study. April 15th is officially World Art Day. And so that's kind of what spurred this unit study. But you can do art all year long because the theme is a universal thing. This idea of creating. There's some really good videos in it, but my favorite video was this woman who was talking about how taking the time to create, to just make, whether it's a podcast like we're putting out here, or a sewing project, or art, poetry, whatever it is, just taking the time out to create is resistance. And I was like, hell yes, I'm here for that. So it's about art. It's not about memorizing. It's not memorizing artists or paintings or that kind of stuff. It's really about understanding how art shapes the world, how it has truly saved lives in some cases, how it's used in resistance and protest. Some art history that's really interesting and looking at the question of like who gets to decide what art is and what efforts are being made to make sure that we're expanding on that as our understanding of decolonization and the work that needs to go into that is there. It's really great. And I think the best part of it is it's really low lift for you. And if you listen to the podcast on the regular, you know that I like that kind of stuff. So yeah, just it's flexible, it's creative, it's designed so your kids can work independently while still engaging deeply with meaningful topics. If you want something that feels different, something that actually sticks, this is a unit that you should definitely check out. And like all of our unit studies, this one is designed for learners of all ages. The book recommendations, the videos, they start out for the youngest learners. They're appropriate for a lot of ages, but it starts out with your tiniest learner, your peanuts, and goes all the way down through teenagers and adults. And you'll just kind of follow that. And then the activities as well give ideas and suggestions for, like give one sentence to explain this thing versus write a research paper. And you just find what works for your kiddo in that list of things. And then you can pull it out. It's $10, it's $7 if you get it through Patreon, but it's a resource that you will be able to use year after year if you want. You could pull it out every
Yeah.
year. You could wait a couple years and come back to it. They're just great. So the information, again, you can find at any of our regular places online, but there'll be a link in the show notes to this specific unit study and probably all of our unit studies. We haven't gotten that far because, that happens in the editing process. But yeah, check it out.
Yeah, it was fun to build. I loved this one because we looked at art from such different perspectives than I think most unit studies that look at art will. And so it was really pretty awesome. I had a good time working on this one. I mean, I usually have a good time working on them. I mean, we're never going to pick a topic that we dislike because then it's not going to come out because we won't be excited about it. But yeah, this one was like a super good time. Once we got started and my wheels started turning and the ball was rolling, I was like, yes, this is good. I like this. So yeah, All right, back to calling bullshit about stuff that just isn't true. So, oh, this is a favorite section of mine, structure and environment myths. We did a whole episode about rethinking structure in homeschooling as part of the deschooling process because there's this thing like, we need structure, we need structure. And you might need structure. We have structure in my house. We're not a completely structure free home, but odds are pretty good that you don't need as much structure as the public school system requires. And that's what we're all programmed to think that we need. So go listen to that episode. It's pretty awesome if I do say so myself. Okay. So structure and environment myths. The first one, learning only happens in a classroom. I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but learning is constant, right? And learning in the real world is powerful. Learning in the real world is one of my whys for homeschooling and our Homeschool 101 course that we offer online. We talk about what's your homeschool why, and we give some examples of some of ours. And one of the workbook activities is to make a list of the reasons why you want to homeschool so that you can make sure that later the decisions that you make align with that why. And you're not just kind of slipping into like, well, this is the way it's always been done, or this is what I know. So I'm perpetuating that thing. One of mine was that I wanted my kids to learn about the world by seeing it as opposed to learning about the world by reading about it in a textbook. And so there was a thing that I saw online one time that said, like, you can't show somebody a vacation brochure and call it a vacation. And so that was my thought process there. I mean, amazing conversations that are happening in the car, at the dinner table, all of that. All of that is learning. Travel experiences, visiting historical sites, going to museums, hobbies. My kids have learned a ton through hobbies, everything from weaving to blacksmithing. Oh my gosh, there's so much involved in that. So, school, sitting at a desk with a textbook, does not have a monopoly on education by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, yeah. I mean, even just think of it as an adult. I know for us, it's tax season. We did our taxes a few weeks ago, but I was thinking as we were doing them, this year we can still do it ourselves. Next year we have some other complicated things coming in. We might not be able to do it ourselves. It might finally be time that we go to an accountant. But it was only a few years ago that we had to, we being my husband and I, had to figure out how to do our taxes where we took into account the fact that we now have investments that actually get dividends and some capital gains stuff. Neither one of us grew up in families that had enough money to be investing in that way. And up until that point, through into COVID kind of times, we were definitely like, we had our emergency fund and we had our retirement account, and that was what we had. And we had a little bit of extra money set aside that when COVID tanked the stock markets, we were like, well, let's put this in and see what happens. Like, I hear good things about it. And now we're at the point where, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's like, oh, look, this one gave us $2 in dividends. And now we have to pay an extra $100 to file our taxes.
But
We
the
have to learn how
IRS
to do
still
that.
wants their percentage of your $2.
Yeah, they do. They do. But we had to learn how to do that. And we did learn how to do that because that's life. You
Yeah.
learn when you need to learn a skill. It's not like, oh, well, I know I'm in my 40s and I just know how to figure this out, but I can't do it because I didn't learn when I was in high school in a classroom.
Yeah. And you didn't get a textbook or sit down at I mean, you might have been sitting at a desk, but you didn't get a textbook. You know, you Google stuff, you watch videos online, you read blogs, ask questions. There's so many ways to learn.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the next one. Kids need desks, schedules, and bells to learn. And look, we
Can we
said it
add
before.
Okay, it's not in the notes. Can we add uniforms to this? Because if thank God I don't see them that often. But the posts that I see about getting monogrammed polo shirts in homeschool world, I'm like, I can't.
There are a surprising number of people who choose to have their kids wear uniforms at home. I'm,
Oh,
I mean, I choose to have my kid wear a uniform of pajamas. So
pajamas. Yeah.
I suppose I don't,
Yeah.
but no, we're not getting actual. Yeah. Okay. So look, we've covered a lot of this already. Structure can help. Structure can be a good thing. And if you need structure, as long as you know why you're using it and you're using it because it's beneficial for you and your kiddo, by all means, rock it out. But it is not the only way. And the structure that you use in your home should be what really works in your home, not block schedules or whatever else is happening in brick and mortar schools. It does not have to be the same. I would argue it shouldn't be because you're not worrying about classroom management for 25 kids unless you're trying to be the next Duggar family. And even then, they're wildly different in age, unless I don't even want to know what you put your body through to make them not wildly different in age at 25 kids. Flexibility, it leads to deeper engagement. You don't have to be so scheduled. If timers and alarms help your kiddos stay on task or help you manage your time, that's fine. But you don't have to use them if they don't work. And you certainly don't need to have bells ringing in your house so that you create some kind of Pavlovian response to like moving on. Like it's like you just don't, it's okay. Like yeah.
Bullshit. Yeah.
Right. If you want a desk, it's fine. But I would really, really encourage you to not require your kid to do all of their work at their desk.
Mm-mm. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I have one who has a desk. The other two, no desk. Yeah. It just depends. Personal preference.
Yeah. And
So,
even then, I'm sure he learns plenty of things not at his
No,
desk.
oh, yeah. For sure. That's where he takes classes. If he's doing an online class, he's at his desk because he's got his 2 monitors and all that stuff. So, yeah. Mhm.
Yep.
Okay. Next section of bullshit. We did a whole episode on this, which is kids need to be grouped strictly by age. I see people all the time who are like, I'm looking for other 6-year-old girls to be friends with my girl. And I'm like, just that? That's it? Like, I just turned 45. I only have 45-year-old female friends? That's not how life works. It's so ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, we did a whole episode on vertical and horizontal socialization. Go listen to it. Arbitrary cutoffs by birth date. This is stuff of the public school system. Mixed age learning. Huge benefits. We know this, right? And when your kid goes out into the real world, like, what are they going to do? Get a job at an office building where there's only other 28-year-old females? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I only work with 28-year-olds. I only work with 34-year-olds. The cubicles are segregated. Like, that section is for 25 to 30. This section is 30 to 35. It makes no sense. So, yeah. Bullshit.
Yeah. And the people who insist that these things have to happen so their kids are ready for the real world. I'm like,
It's not the real world.
that's like, what real world are you living in?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm really, I will take a field trip there. I would love
Invite
to
me
see
over.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So the next overall general big picture section, time and productivity myths. So first, more hours equals more learning. Okay. This is one of those things. Yes, to an extent. This is kind of one of those no-brainers. Obviously, yes, to an extent. You have the potential to learn more in 4 hours than you do in 15 minutes.
10 minutes. Yeah.
I mean, hello. But also, there is such a thing as diminishing returns. Mental fatigue is real. I don't think there's a single one of us who hasn't sat through some kind of a training where you get it, and then they're still going on and on. And now you're like doodling or you're making a to-do list of all the things you need to do later. Or like you've just turned the sound down because they don't want you to talk. They're just going to talk at you and you're not even paying attention, but you're making sure that you finish the training so that it logs you as being done. Clearly, more hours did not equal more learning.
Yeah, no. Okay, next one. Kids should always be doing something quote unquote educational. First of all, most adults do not have a proper grip on what is and is not educational, right? That there is learning in so many different things. I mean, Amanda was sharing a story not that long ago about how her kiddo was helping bag groceries and they were doing multiple stops. And by the last stop, he was like, I've got the hang of this now, like how to get the things in like Tetris wise and what makes the most strategic sense and all that kind of stuff. That's educational because at some point, sometime he's going to need to put things in other things and it all carries over to be able to work a space efficiently or organize something efficiently. And all of those skills carry over. So is it a massive lesson? Is it like learning calculus? No, but it was still educational and he still learned something. And not only did he learn it, but he recognized that he learned it and he had like a little boost of like, I did this thing and it feels good. So,
and also, can we just say, I wish more people and more baggers understood how to actually put shit in the bag. So like, I'm taking it as a huge win.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a tremendous amount of logic that comes into that.
Yeah. The
And
spatial
building logic,
reasoning. Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
is never a bad thing. But they do not always have to be doing something educational. You zone out sometimes. You doom scroll on your phone. You read smut. You watch crime things on television to fall asleep at night. Yeah, there's some element of learning things in there. Okay, fine. But rest and boredom are okay. We did a whole episode about why it's great for kids to be bored sometimes. Rest and boredom spark creativity. Over scheduling your kids, way to kill curiosity, right? They need downtime. And life skills like bagging groceries count as learning. So, education, first of all, has a much broader definition or viewpoint than you're probably acknowledging if you're new to homeschooling, or especially if you came from a traditional environment. We have so many people who are like, I'll be fine on the educational side because I taught school and I'm a curriculum specialist. And I'm like, you have so much deschooling to do. It's not even funny. I actually think you have a ton of unpacking to do before you like really sink your teeth into homeschooling. So the view of education is much broader than what the traditional system says. But also, it's okay for kids to be bored. We do not have to schedule every minute of their single day with something that is educational and developmental and productive.
yeah. No, exactly. Which leads perfectly into the next one, which is breaks are wasted time. Come on now. I mean, yes, kids can waste time. Yes, absolutely. We all can. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't have days where I'm like, seriously, would you just sit down and get your work done so that we can move on with the day? Like, we have other things we want to do that require putting on clothes and leaving the house. Like, stop fucking around and just like do the things. But that does not change the fact that you cannot go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing without ever taking time for your brain to transition, to process what you've already learned, to have the time to transfer it from short term memory into long term memory. All of those things require a break. This is the basic neuroscience, and that doesn't sound very basic, but it's not that complicated.
Exactly. Right. I think too, like you were saying, like going from one thing to the next, especially if you have an introvert.
Mhm.
My oldest is like such an introvert. And that was part of his issue in school was that it was like, all right, we're spending 10 minutes on this and then whiplash, we move to this and then whiplash, we move to that. And he's like, 10 minutes on something is nothing for him because he
Mhm.
likes to really settle into things. And so he's like, I hadn't even settled on the last thing yet. And now you want me to whiplash into something else? What are you doing? It was awful for him. So
Mhm.
yeah, he needs like that, like really slow transition. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, next category. Here's where we might start to differ a little bit more. Curriculum and value myths. Okay. Amanda literally offers curriculum services where she will pick out curriculum for your specific child, subject by subject, and then write you a whole thing where it paces out like, this is how you're going to do this whole thing. I don't do that thing. I've never really bought curriculum. So, okay. The first one that I will call bullshit on is that you need to have a formal curriculum to learn. And okay, so there's a couple of ways you could take that. It could be by the task or by the subject. And of course, you could learn a task or a subject without a formal curriculum. Think about the last thing that you learned as an adult. I mean, I learned to sew as a kid with my mom, but I wasn't super independent with it. And then I stopped sewing for like years and years. But as an adult, I've picked up way more sewing skills than I ever had. I figured it out with YouTube videos and seeing other people in Facebook groups share what they were sewing and like some tips that they shared or something. There's no formal curriculum that I've ever followed to enhance my skills tremendously when it comes to sewing. So
Yeah.
that's the case. You could also take this to say that you don't need formal curriculum for anything. Is it possible to go through your entire education without formal curriculum? Of course it is. You can totally do that. I saw a video the other day somebody sent me, and it was this person who was getting their PhD in therapy, and they had been unschooled through the end of college because there's an unschooling college up in New England, and then went to Brown to get their PhD in therapy, and they were doing amazing. And they were not a curriculum person at all, and they just seamlessly slid right into this process. So is it possible? Yes. Does it take a shit ton of intentionality and planning? Yes. Are there unschoolers who like curriculum? Yes. I have one who really likes curriculum. Like, where'd you come from? But he loves it. And I'm not teaching it, it's outsourced, but I'm working with the teacher to make sure that the curriculum meets what his goals are and it's the way he likes to learn. So, do you need a curriculum for everything? No. There's plenty of times that I see things that are like things that you just have conversations with your kid about, and people are like, I need a curriculum for this. You don't need a curriculum for every single thing that you need to impart to your children. Sometimes it can just be conversation. Sometimes it can be through a book that you read together. Sometimes it can be through a documentary. Curriculum isn't a bad thing, but it's not a requirement. Some of the best learning that happens is completely unplanned. So yeah, you don't need it. It's not an essential per se, but for some kids, they like it. And for some kids, they don't. And that's okay. There's other ways to accomplish the same thing in the end. Amanda's going to say bullshit on that, but yeah.
Well, I mean, do I believe that you need a formal curriculum to learn? No, I don't believe that. I would call bullshit on that as well. Curriculum is a tool. It is not a requirement. Do I use a curriculum for almost everything that we learn? Yes. Yes, I do. We are going to soon do some stuff around health and nutrition and the human body. And sure, we could talk about it and watch some videos and it would cover it, but I'm still going to get some workbooks and I'm going to cobble some things together and create my own kind of loose curriculum that we can work from because I like having something. And
A
part of that
roadmap.
is, yeah, I need a little bit of a roadmap. And part of it too is because of my chronic illness, I'm not always going to be available for the deep discussions. My brain is not always going to be there on the days that I need it to be there. So I like knowing that I have some resources, some tangible physical resources that I can kind of whip out when I need it. I'm going to
When you
do
have
the
a
same
kiddo who
thing.
likes curriculum,
That's it. I mean, he
right?
enjoys it. He's a
Yeah.
book person. He is
Yeah.
the kid that asks for workbooks of certain types or wants more resources like that, that comes to me and says, "Can you look up some information and some worksheets on Maxwell's properties or whatever the hell it was?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is. I'm going to need a little bit more information before I go Googling, but sure." So, I mean, if that works, that works. But I can't imagine any situation where I would say you need a formal curriculum just to be able to learn or for everything. Okay, next one. Creative subjects are less important than core subjects. Eh, I think this one's tricky. I think they are important. Depending on what your kiddo is doing, the type of kiddo they are, and where they see their life taking them, I could see how creative subjects might be less important than core subjects, but that doesn't mean I think you should remove them. I think you need to make sure that you include them. Creativity, it drives innovation, it creates neural pathways that help with STEM things. So if you have a really STEM focused kiddo, a lot of creative subjects, music and art and things like that, are very important for optimizing their neural pathways. So, do I think that creative subjects need to be treated equally as important and that you need to spend 50% of your time on creative subjects and 50% of your time on core subjects? No, I wouldn't go that far, especially if you have a kiddo who isn't into creative stuff.
Yeah.
But they are real skills. They're not extras and they
Mhm.
are important, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I have a kid who learned their core subjects through creative subjects and is very strong in math and writing through creative subjects. But then I have a math kid who, if I did 50-50, like you just said, like he'd be like, why are you torturing me? Do you not love me? Like, but it is interesting because my daughter often gets asked, like, are your parents creatives?
Mm,
And I would define myself as a creative. But the interesting thing is, I wouldn't necessarily define my husband as a creative.
mm.
And it was funny because she was talking to somebody one day and they were like, well, what is your dad's background or whatever? And he's got an engineering background and this and that. And like talked about like what he did. And they were like, that's ridiculously creative. It's not art in the traditional sense. But when it comes
Yeah.
to the skill sets from creativity, like, yes, of course, he has all of those skills and calls upon them for his work and for his and I'm like, oh, that is an interesting way of looking at it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Passion projects are less valuable than academic ones. I mean, hello, I'm an unschooler. So, no, we learned through passion projects. My kids got their core subjects through passion projects. So, for us, this is a no. But again, and I keep thinking we should do an episode on like the spectrum of unschooling, because I feel like, especially when people come in and they're like, what is unschooling? I don't understand. And people are like, you let your kids' interests just dictate everything. And it's like, yes, but there's such a range within the unschooling world. And it really wasn't until, I don't know, over the years as I've met more people and we've done this podcast and we've talked to more people and stuff like that, I realized that we unschool on one end of the spectrum, which I kind of knew before, but then I'm like, no, there needs to be.
But
Okay, hold
then
on, I'm
Chess
saying.
Tattoo Lady made a big splash, and you were like, oh, actually, we're not that
Oh
kind
my
of unschoolers.
Right. And so I'm like, okay, even Carla, who we had on way back in season 1, and she's written a bunch of books on unschooling and she has a big unschooling Facebook community. She's a very intentional unschooler. She was making sure her kids had consumer math skills. There's a very big difference between just letting them do whatever all the time and play video games versus, and I'm not saying video games are the devil, video games are bad, etc. But that's like the common example that you hear where people are like, if I just let my kids go free, they would just play video games all the time. Like they would never. And I'm like, I feel like in order to successfully unschool, there should be some sort of partnership happening where there's conversations and some planning and some goal setting and some personal development that you're kind of, I feel like, acting as a life coach in a successful unschooling situation where you're not dictating to your kids and mandating to your kids. It is child led, but you're also looking at their choices and their day and their actions through the lens of an adult who has a fully formed frontal lobe and knows how the real world works. So anyway, we need to do a whole episode on that at some point. But yeah, for us, passion projects are huge. They're super deep and engaging, super deep learning. Sometimes your kids get so into stuff and you're like, could you please stop reading about this thing and come eat dinner? There's real learning happening when that's happening, right? Passion projects, kids tend to be super persistent. They're willing to work around obstacles, roadblocks, stuff like that. They'll take ownership of something. You're not having to harp on them and be like, you have to get this done. You have to get this done. So yeah, and it's often reflective of real world work. A lot of stuff in like the corporate world and stuff is project based. So I don't know how passionate I ever was about anything I worked on in the pharmaceutical world when I was stuck in corporate hell for 10 years. But yeah, a lot of my work was project based. So there you go. So yeah, for us, that's very, very true. But it's going to depend on the type of learner you have, the type of homeschool philosophy you're implementing in your life, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to look very different.
Yeah, that's it. I think this one is much more tricky because I think I have a pretty good idea the general direction that my kiddo is heading. He has no idea what he wants to specifically do later in life, but I have a pretty good idea of the steps he's going to take to get closer to that goal. And that will require some public speaking skills. It's going to require some pretty good research and academic writing skills. And I don't think any of his passion projects are really going to cover any of those kinds of things. I
Stop
mean,
motion Lego videos are not going to get them there.
exactly. And like the fun world building mythology book he's writing is fantastic. And I love that for him. It's a great creative project. It's a fun passion project, but it's not going to get him the published journal articles that he needs for the PhD that he says he wants. So I think it's kind of one of those things. Part of that depends on age. Maybe as he gets a little older, he will naturally evolve those passion projects, and maybe he won't. And he'll choose to keep them separate. We'll see. And a lot of that,
Mhm.
again, like you said, it depends on your kiddo, their style, and how they want to do that. And if they're interested in mingling them because that works for them, or if they want to keep them separate because that's what works for them. Okay, so next one, future path myths. There's like one really big one here that we need to talk about. Let's cover it. So, college is the only path to success. Please tell me if you're listening to this podcast, you understand that that's bullshit. Like, please tell me. I, I fully expect my kid to go to college. I am a big proponent of college. If you don't know what to do and you have the ability to take yourself to college, I think college is a great transition into the real world. It's a chance to dabble with being an adult without actually being an adult yet. It's a great place to meet other kids that come from other young adults that come from different life experiences and different socioeconomic backgrounds. And it can be such a great melting pot and introduces you to things that you would have never met. That is 100% what happened for me with college. We came from a really small conservative town. Going to college was huge in opening my eyes, just so many different things. But there is
You're
no way.
oh, sorry.
Oh, go
You're
ahead.
the scenario JD Vance warns us about. that
That's it.
you're gonna go get brainwashed at a liberal institution.
I 100% went to a Catholic university and came out crazy liberal. Like, not even Catholic, was never anywhere close to Catholic. But exactly. I think college is great if it's anywhere remotely close to a good choice for you. But that can be community college. That could be trade schools. You don't have to even do those things. There are other options. College is one path. It doesn't even need to be necessarily your educational path. I mean, yeah, it doesn't, it is not the only path to success.
Yeah. Yep. Not right for every kid, not right for every career choice, all of the above.
Yeah.
Okay, last section, behavior and motivation myths. So first one, if kids had a choice, they would never learn anything useful. The really interesting thing is when kids are small, one of the things that is the most mind numbing aspects of raising a toddler is how many fucking questions they ask every day.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God. My kids went to a preschool where they would do show and share every week, and it was a different letter of the alphabet. And for the most part, that was easy. Although one of my kids, he had this remote control car that he was obsessed with. And so he took it for like R for remote control car, C for car, V for vehicle, Y for yellow. It showed up like he just can. I mean, it was like 3, and he kept coming up with ways to make this car fit the letter that it was. But we got to Q, and it was like, what the heck am I doing for Q? And I made him a superhero cape that he wore to show and share that day. And I just used a marker on the back of it. And he was Captain Questions because he asked more questions than all my other 2 kids put together. And by the end of the day, I was like twitching in the fetal position in the corner from the questions. Kids are born curious. They want to know everything. Part of the way that they become incurious is when we kill their love of learning, whether that's through the methods that are commonly used in traditional education or by workifying and making everything awful. So like we said before, like if they're having fun, it's not rigorous. And it's like, that's the mentality that kills kids' love of learning and their curiosity. They're like, oh, if I express any interest in this thing, she's going to like make me do worksheets and do this thing and blah, blah, blah. So yeah, they become incurious. But yeah, if we allow their natural curiosity to thrive, or if your kids have lost their natural curiosity, one of my huge areas of focus would be focusing on getting that back and how to do that. And we can help with that. Again, come to Patreon, come to coaching. We can help with that kind of stuff. The other thing too is like we said, the bullshit myth was if my kids had a choice, they would never learn anything useful. What's useful? And why do you get to define what is useful? I've talked before about the Steve Jobs thing where he went to Reed College and he learned calligraphy. And he said in his commencement speech where he talked about it, that it had no hope of any practical application in his life, but he liked it. So was that useful? The majority of people would be like, why are you learning calligraphy? And then he talked about how instrumental it became in all of his work at Apple. So why do you get to decide what's useful? One of my kids is a weaver. She literally makes fabric. It takes her like a week to generate a yard of fabric that you could go to Walmart and buy for $7. And my dad at one point was like, where is all this leading to? And I'm like, I don't know, but she's happy and she loves it and she's passionate about it. I'm okay. It doesn't bother me. But in his mind, which is like that very like corporate, like this has to have a means to an end thing. And I was like, no, I'm okay with it. It's all good. So yeah, your kids were born with curiosity and you can spark their curiosity again if you need to, if it is gone. But yeah, kids are, I mean, what kid isn't curious about stuff? Hello.
Mine is in the first half of the day, it's, do you have a minute for a question? And then in the second half of the day, it's, is your brain okay for a question? And usually by about 7 or 8 p.m., the answer is no. No, it's not.
Right. Yeah.
Write it down. Ask me tomorrow.
Yeah.
I cannot think about any more of your deep questions. I love you with all of my heart, but no.
Like I would lie down in traffic for you. But if you ask me one more question, I'm going to do it voluntarily.
Not even joking. Boy. Okay. So last one, motivation must come from external pressure. I mean, I can't imagine that you're listening to our podcast in general and you're like, yes, that sounds right. Look, the reality is sometimes motivation is going to come from external pressure. There's no getting around that in the real world. At all times throughout life, there will be motivation that comes from external pressure. But in
You keep bringing up, sorry, you keep bringing up doing your taxes, and every time I get like a pit in my stomach, and I'm like, okay. And my external pressure is I would like to not go to jail. So yes, I will get my
and
taxes done.
yeah, exactly. That's just it. It's always going to be there. It's always going to be a factor in life. But it's not the only factor. There's plenty of intrinsic motivation. It's more sustainable when it's intrinsically motivated. Sometimes rewards and I hate to use the word punishments, but natural consequences or some version of punishment, sometimes they can be helpful, but a lot of times they backfire. And we know this. This isn't new. There's a difference between short term compliance and long term drive and motivation. Internal, intrinsic motivation is almost always preferred. You're not always going to get it, but it's preferable.
And developing that skill, if it's not there, cultivating that is
Mm.
part of homeschooling.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. All right. Phew. Oh, that was a lot of bullshit, but we've made it. Okay. So that just about wraps us up for today. Don't go anywhere yet. We have a mantra for you that will hopefully carry you through those future moments of doubt or panic. A quick reminder, check the show notes for oodles of resources and support that can best be described as everything we wished we had when we started homeschooling. We've built it. It exists. It's there, and there's more
Yeah.
coming. So stay tuned. But without further ado, our mantra: we've been taught to treat the system like the goal, when really it's just one option and not always the right one.
Yeah. Yep. There you go.
All right, friends. Whew, that was a lot to take in, but we did it. Happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a great one.